Hello, and welcome to At the Movies with Dante and Louis. I'm Louis Jacobs.
And I'm Dante DeLille.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about a scary sort of horror film that was recently released on Netflix, and it's called Things Heard and Seen. And it was directed by
Sherry Berman and Robert Pulcini.
Right. And what do you have to say about those two?
So I didn't really know them before this movie, so I went and did some research on what other movies they've done. And I saw that they did one of their first movies was American Splendor, and that was nominated for an Academy Award. Their other notable movie was The Nanny Diaries with Scarlett Johansson.
I think the integrity of the direction that they present is, because all of the performances were pretty solid, so it seems to me like the direction was, specific as in terms of directing, the actors. That's what I look at a lot of the time.
I have some thoughts about that, like the direction and for me, I feel like they're not the right people to be doing a horror movie. Like they don't know what they're doing. They're more like comedies and dramas.
Right. Okay. So Things Heard and Seen. Dante, give us a little bit of a plot summary.
In the 1980s, George and Catherine Clare relocate to the Hudson Valley into an old farmhouse where Claire begins to suspect that her marriage has a sinister darkness, one that rivals her new home's history.
Her new home's history. That's a basic plot summary. It reminded me immediately of things like The Shining. They don't buy the hotel, but they are the caretakers. Obviously, Amityville Horror. We wonder, you wonder why any fresh young couple with maybe a kid or two moves to a place in upstate New York. Why are you doing that?
Compared to where they were living, like in the city,
Right.
She had her own life there too. That's what it seems like.
Right. That's a big point. So couple, in this case with a young daughter, moves to, because he has a professor position at a college as an art history professor. So the major players are
Amanda Seyfried and James Norton. They play the husband and wife.
Amanda Seyfried is, she's got a soaring career right now. She was just nominated for an Oscar for Meg, playing Marion Davies, an old-timey actress that had a reputation. Mamma Mia, of course, Mean Girls, Les Mis. I don't know James Norton, who plays George Clare, but I know he did the British series Happy Valley.
I'm not really, I don't really know him that much. Like I'm pretty sure I've seen him in something, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. But Amanda Seyfried, all those movies, she's in a lot of stuff. For me, I haven't really found anything that she's done like that great or substantial.
That was terribly compelling about,
one of my biggest problems I personally found with this movie was with those two leads. For me, I found they weren't the right actors. I just didn't find that they were that interesting in the roles.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really work for me. I don't know. That was just my opinion. What did you think of them?
But it's interesting that so that's a good, opinion. But then they surround them by really great supporting players. And I thought the supporting players, I'll just jump right in. In his new teaching situation at this college, F. Maria Abraham, who we know from things like he's had over a 50-plus career. Amadeus, huge role. Scarface, more recently Grand Budapest Hotel, so tons of television as well. So he plays the boss of George Clare, and he has a couple of scenes actually, and
Yeah, that like I was happy to see him. Like when he finally shows up in the movie, I was like, oh, okay, now it's getting good. Like because he starts to bring in his beliefs and spirituality and stuff, and I thought he did a really good job. But I don't find he's in it enough. Like he's not in the movie enough.
Well, and it comes to a very untidy end. We also have Rhea Seehorn. She plays Catherine's best friend, Justine, and I had to look her up immediately after the thing finished. You wrote something about Better Call Saul. What was that?
That's like I think a prequel to the Breaking Bad TV show.
Okay.
So it like follows his one of the characters' lawyers, and she's like a supporting cast member on that show.
Okay. Yeah. I thought she was really super interesting in this film. Also, she brought an element of, another couple with a little bit of money moving to upstate New York. She's weaving, random nonsense like, I'm a weaver. But a really strong performance because she becomes key in the plot, right?
Yeah. Towards the end.
What did you think of Natalia? And we'll save the best for last because I know you want to talk about her. But Natalia Dyer is from Stranger Things. Just a sort of a small part in this film, but very sort of important and interesting. I find that she gives interesting performances.
Yeah, I thought she was fine. Just like everybody else, like all the supporting characters, I find they're not like utilized perfectly. It's mainly focused on the two leads.
Right.
But the thing is, like everybody else is giving better performances and are more interesting, I find, as characters.
Okay. And then who is your favorite added character, or at least you had some things to say about her?
I was surprised. I was happy to see Karen Allen in the movie. I know her from the Indiana Jones movies. She plays Marion Ravenwood and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then the last one, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So I haven't seen her in a movie since that, and that was back in 2008. So it was fun to see her pop up. Right,
another actor who again has been around since the late 70s for her probably, and working steadily, and interesting choice, right, at this point in her life for this character, and underused, but a couple pivotal points for her, pivotal moments.
Yeah, she pops up here and there.
So Dante, what's your overall vibe with the film?
I was like just bored to death with it. To be honest, like I watched the trailer before I watched the movie, and I had these low expectations, and for me the movie like lived up to those low expectations. I just found it very, very boring and not scary.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily scary. To me, it's, like we mentioned, Amityville Horror and The Shining, it's that element of the husband, basically it's spousal abuse, like blown out of proportion. But for me, that was sort of scary because I was trying to figure out psychologically what the heck. I didn't understand if a ghost was affecting him or, a spirit in the house was affecting him as well. I just didn't know where his bad behavior was coming from. Just sort of what motivated him. We know he was from moneyed parents in Connecticut, so maybe there were high standards. We know there were financial issues with the money that he was given from his parents, which was cut off. We find out sort of at the beginning. So you felt that there was like something financial at stake for him? You know, he was just a bad, I mean, the film set in 1980, so maybe it's all about that sort of capitalistic money kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to like. That was one of the first questions I had was why was it set in the 1980s? Like, what's the purpose? And I never really understood why that happened.
Another thing that I was going to ask you about was the weight, and I was looking this up, the weight concerns, her dietary issues. What's up with that?
Yeah, I noticed that like right off. Like that's like in one of the first scenes, and it plays throughout. I think it has to do with like him being like, because he seems to put her down a lot, or he puts down women a lot, because there's that scene where they're speaking to their like new friends. They go to a party with their new friends, and they're driving back home, and he says, "Oh, his wife can really eat a lot of lasagna or something."
Right. And then he calls somebody out as a lesbian too, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
And his father also calls out the cousin who had an accident on a boat. As a gay, loser, right? He says, I don't know which his father was more embarrassed about, his son being gay or so. I think George Clare is just a bad apple right off the top, and probably influenced by really disgusting parents.
I think now that I'm thinking of it, like that 80s, what you mentioned about like that 80s and the greed and like how people were awful back then. I think that kind of plays into it, and that toxic like masculinity sort of, where
right,
like it's only him and his father, and like they're both awful people, you find, throughout the movie.
That's right. Well, so then what does it come down to for you in terms of the success of the film or the failure? I won't say the words "do you recommend" yet, but what bothered you most?
I think it was really the cast. The main two just didn't really sell anything. Because for me, this really reminded me of the movie What Lies Beneath with Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford.
Yes.
And
okay.
They're both like slower movies, and they're not like very intense on the ghosts imagery and stuff like that. But right. I really like What Lies Beneath, because you got Michelle Pfeiffer giving like this amazing performance, and you have Harrison Ford like delivering really good acting in that movie.
Right.
So that's my biggest problem. And then I just find that it's predictable and kind of unoriginal. I find the story. It overall didn't work for me.
Well, I'm gonna say I recommend the film because of this. I love the performances, and I disagree. I mean, I don't feel the same way in terms of the lead actors. I go to a horror film, and yes, The Shining, films like The Shining and maybe What Lies Beneath, and obviously a myriad of other horror films over the years are much more well crafted, and sort of the design, like you said, in regard to the directors, the design is sort of put together and sort of and maybe scarier as well. But I guess I've just been so lacking in sitting down and watching a film for the last year. Like I've done it, but so my expectations aren't that high for what a horror film is supposed to be. And because I was intrigued with Amanda Seyfried's performance, because it was curious to me. And I loved F. Murray Abraham being there. Like I said, Rhea Seehorn, that character was really super fantastic to me. The scene on the swing outside of the party, yes, where they're smoking pot, and all of a sudden he becomes something, and her reaction, so the whole ride for me, except for the ending, which I'm like, what, really? That's what we're gonna do right now? Like for a long time, it seems like they hold that shot to remind you, oh, it's the,
Yeah. That's like, I kind of wish the rest of the movie went that weird.
Oh, I see.
I feel like, because for me, I found the movie was kind of like bland, and I'd rather have watched a movie so bad it was good, where this is
Right.
just so, for me it was just so like nothing.
Mediocre.
Yeah, but I did like that scene on the swings. I was gonna ask you what was some of your favorite scenes,
Yeah.
because that was one of mine.
I also liked the one scene in the Museum of Art when he takes his students on a field trip and runs into that ex-colleague. I believe that was his advisor when he was getting his PhD in art history. And so when that character pops in, I believe the only person of color in the film too, and questions him about, sort of, why are these students calling you professor? That's when we sort of realize that he's woven this web kind of lies to get to where he is.
Yeah, I wish there was more of that, because that scene, and then the scene with F. Murray Abraham, like later on, like one of his last scenes, it kind of reminded me of the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Many times.
Matt Damon, and I like that the character's starting to like get made,
get caught in fantastical lies where you're like, whoa, no. Well, I'm going to give it a recommendation because I think it's a good ride. It's a good enough ride for sitting on your couch and just taking the journey. But again, my caveat is that I had low expectations, because horror films to me are, you don't always hit it very hard. So I'm going to say go for the ride. Dante?
I'm happy at least one of us have enjoyed this movie. Yeah, I'm going to say not recommend. I would recommend seeing What Lies Beneath, watching that. Watch His House on Netflix, that came out last year, and that's a couple moving into a house.
All right.
That's a scary movie, and that has themes of refugees moving into different countries. So that movie's really good.
Well, I think we've covered this movie called Things Heard and Seen. It's on Netflix, both in Canada and the United States. Join us next time when we review another movie. This is At the Movies with Dante and Louis. I'm Louis Jacobs.
And I'm Dante DeLille.
Thank you for watching.
Anna.